Greetings and welcome. My name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, the Corner Core, my current patrons, Clayton and Ruby and Stephanie and Jonathan, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor or student. And student, one and the same thing in some ways. There's three things today, and one is a brief mentioning of a flickering flame insofar as I didn't do my routine yesterday of either the reformer or the broadcast because it was a weekday, but especially the absence of the reformer. My comment is that one of the reasons to have a routine is because it so sticks out when you fail to maintain it. Right? And so it's worth taking notice of, and yet not decrying it because from the stillness or from the lack of air that drives you, hence the flickering flame. Out of dead calm comes the wind, or inspiration, right? And in some way, without a big effort, but participation in normalcy, at least for me, I'm into a routine that I would expect from myself. And lucky to be here. Number 2. The title is More Words, comma, Better Grammar. Right? More words, better grammar. In the tsunami of Pilates passion and the pursuit to share all of that, and much of that pursuit in terms of monetizing it, it's only natural and it's human nature that it documents itself. I've done it most of my life, and that's at hermit.com. And compare what other body of information you have on Pilates, and it's a point of comparison, that's all. Well, okay, so in the documenting of what's there and putting it out as exercises. Exercises are like words in a dictionary. Right? They have origins and pronunciations and antonyms and precautions, that kind of thing. Every word has a thing, and every thing has an application to another thing. Right? And that takes us to Kentucky Fried Pilates, because you're dealing with issues and not the point of the method, which is the whole, and that the issues melt into the pursuit of the whole. I suggest, to the extent that you understand the target, no matter how much the need to have an issue addressed or talked about, as an instructor, you know that where you're headed is toward the experience, and from that experience, the harmonic result throughout. see so much on my streams of social media that show exercises, words in the dictionary, and MMP is a point of view that maintains it's more than just the exercises themselves, it's the mat sequence, and that from that sequence there's a perceived or demonstrated, not perceived, it's perceived because it's demonstrated, grammar to the effort, that in understanding the grammar, empowers you as a Pilates instructor to speak the language. And knowing the grammar and how Pilates is structured, it empowers you to observe and become part of that corrective feedback loop. And for whatever else you bring into, for everything else you bring into who you are as a person that becomes you as the Pilates instructor, MMP is an ideal point of view that just looks at the arena of biology and physics to make a theory of an ideal existing within Joe's original work, based on 3 things out of Joe's book: his definition, his statement that contrology develops the body uniformly, and then the sequence of the mat. When my title is More Words, comma, Better Grammar, as in any language, the depth of what you understand comes across in in your use of words and construction of language, right? So I'm making this direct comparison in terms of, surviving as a Pilates instructor. I haven't talked about that in that way really much. You're surviving because you understand what makes it what it is, and what makes it what it is structure, right? Uniform eccentric loading flowing through progressive patterns of movement is the MMP definition, but that progressive patterns of movement, flexion, extension, side bending, rotation, and torsion, I don't know that that's challenged anywhere in the culture because it's just there in Joe's original work. So, just my point of view, it's just one point of view among thousands, millions. The original work is Joe's pictures, Joe's words, and Joe's film. That's the original work. The art that Joe took, or Joe created. That's just my definition of Joe's original work, is his words, his pictures, and his film. Now, another good label for that I lay over that or with that is classical, because it's classical if it's original work, right? So in MMP, the original work and classical are the same thing. Now, whatever has been made of that, by whatever means, through personal acquaintance or derivation thereof, that's the tradition. That's traditional. It's what the tradition has carried forth from Joe, and some would argue maybe more directly from Joe person to person matters more than his art. But that's my biased opinion as an artist, that I would hope you take my art at merit, regardless of the faults you find in me. See? Number 3. So this is how the title goes. Understand how you can be as light as possible when you move. Understand how you can be as light as possible when you move. So, what did my notes say to that? I don't know if they said anything. I went off into, what do I mean by that? So, distributing the load, or the weight, of your body as evenly as possible. And how do you do that? By engaging as much musculature and structure as you can to distribute the load. The issue is how heavy you are in space when it comes to moving through space. It's a physics thing. And in our case, it's a biology thing. But the biology reaches into the physics as part of surviving. Generally, when I hold up my light, it always goes missing when I go to look for anything. It goes missing. Right here in front of me, it's like the eyes say, ignore what you're looking for, right? There's a switch there. Can you see it right above my ear? And when I flip that switch, watch the varying depths of intensity that come out of what flipping the switch does. At least 2 boom booms, if not that third, that's the batteries are weak. But the distinction between degrees of intensity, let's say, all right? The human being engages itself as best it can to move through space as effortlessly as possible. Within MMP, this point of view of Pilates is just one point of view out of millions. Many, if not most, attach their point of view to a lineage of tradition. Without real regard to or finding relevance in the original work. And that's maybe human nature. MMP steps outside of that point of view and says, let's look at the original work and be very specific about it to come up with a point of view that is the MMP point of view. Doesn't have to be yours. The reason I say there's always two things as a takeaway from me is because there's CT and MMP. And to the extent you refer to them as that, it's short and quick, and if people don't care, they don't need to know more. But CT is about core new tension, and that's biomechanics. That's the body and its reach into the physics that it finds itself in to facilitate its movement through space. The other thing is MMP, and that's one point of view of Pilates out of everyone else's. It's unusual because it's based in a theory that there's an ideal within the original, founded on 3 things from Joe's book. That points out core new tension along the way to a definition of that ideal that is at the heart of the MMP point of view. The definition of the ideal. If you can come up with a better definition and it points to the same thing I'm pointing to, okay. If it is what it is, if it is what it is, then no matter what tradition does to it, understanding the essence of what it is in and of itself gives you a point of reference to that 10,000 views of the word, of the subject. Oh, regardless. So that's my closing comment. Pilates, see, you can try to talk about Pilates within the realm of traditional and modern, but in what way, in what major way, is there any distinction between those two? Now, I don't know. The same thing goes for contemporary and traditional, or modern, or evolved. All of those things all of those kinds of words that indicate what has become of what was. And much of that, I think, comes with the presumption or the inclination that there is no essence, only a passage of tradition. Then at some point becomes something else. There will always be the court, and the court will always be full of those donning the garb of by the same tailor as the emperor. Keeping in mind that Joseph Pilates was a survivor, and his method is about surviving, and in the pursuit of his method, the more you understand what's going on in terms of the biology and the physics. But see, not just the biology. When Pilates merely becomes a study in biology and biomechanics, it's just when it becomes about that, just the biology, in a presumed petri dish of physics that doesn't matter when it does. When you have an apprehension of the two things that I've been trying to explain, which is the basis of these 5 things, which is the presentation at udemy.com, How to Survive as a Pilates Instructor. Get that in your hand so that you can just read what's there, to absorb and become familiar with the 5 things I suggest your trip is when you sell tickets for an explanation about CT and MMP. And you can make it a big surprise and insist on payment before further explanation. But really, I would just take it to the level of CT is about biomechanics and MMP is about one point of view of Pilates. That's all. And if they're not interested in either one of those, then further effort at explanation or the sharing of your treasure is unwarranted. When you understand the grammar, when you know you have the basis for speaking the language, no matter how big the dictionary gets, sitting right on my lap, no matter how big the dictionary gets. And as the dictionary continues to expand exponentially in terms of exercises and words in the book and wanting to add new words, the structure in terms of, this is a book I made, self-published, it's so imperfect, but it points to the fact that there's a grammar within Joe's original work. It comes out in number 5, the definition. And in understanding that definition, it gives you a capacity in speaking the language of Pilates as an instructor, and just having a sense of where an exercise comes when considered through the grammar of the original work. Think that over. We'll play it a couple times. Thank you for watching. I'm glad you showed up. Because life can't live forever. Read between the lines. Who does that? See behind the curtain. Who has to be willing to go look? Evaluate points of view. Who else but you can do that? And in doing so, do not underestimate knowing what you know about a point of view that explains Pilates. It explains the why of Pilates. Why is Pilates what it is? And then all the other questions as well. And then add 2 and 2. If you don't take an attitude for the value of of what you have to offer. No one else will. So I'll offer them a spectrum, like on Patreon, patreon.com. Join Clayton and Ruby and Stephanie and Jonathan to help me keep my website open, which is a treasure trove, I would say, of work representing Joe's original work. So what I have of film of Joe, which is considerable. I haven't seen anything from anybody demonstrating anything that isn't in my private library. That library is 24 gigabytes, which is large in size, I think, and yet it's just another database of exercises. What matters to me is that you take away the MMP point of view, that there's an experience that comes from the pursuit of the effort, which is a coordination of capacities of being, thinking, and observing. The masses and the market and the public, I don't think will ever want to hear that. They just won't want to understand it to that level and depth. But that doesn't mean that my message to you as a Pilates instructor is not to be aware of it. Because to the extent that more words or more exercises from more places are crowding into the database of the community on Pilates, still, so far as I know, the only one that takes the point of view that MMP does and sees it in an ideal way and having an essence of its own, that is a filter. That is at least something to hold up by comparison. Like seeing a buoy, not during a tsunami, but just a normal buoy that's in its rightful place and lets you navigate, and yet that's the only thing that you see. Or perhaps that's the only thing that stands out from everything that you see. It's a better way of saying it, don't you think? And in knowing that, add 2 and 2, direct your thinking, Geist.